Welcome to the Deep Dive. Our mission today, well, it's to cut through all the noise around what's arguably the most urgent geopolitical story happening right now. This really intense escalation between Israel and Iran.
It really is.
We're going to sift through the sources, try to untangle the key facts, understand the immediate spark, but also the decades of rivalry behind it, and crucially, what's actually at stake for the region, for the world.
Exactly.
We want to give you those essential nuggets, basically, so you walk away feeling properly informed.
Okay.
Let's dive in.
It's definitely a situation of immense complexity. And it's critical. We unpack it carefully, looking at all the angles. It's not just what happened, but why it matters globally.
Complex might be putting it mildly, right?
Well,
and it's not just the history. It's how fast things seem to be moving now. The world really sat up and took notice on June 13th, 2025. What was that first big move by Israel?
right, June 13th. That was a day Israel launched a surprise, very wide-ranging attack. They hit over 100 sites across Iran.
Over 100. Wow.
Yeah. And these weren't just random targets. We're talking critical infrastructure, like the Natanz nuclear facility, key military bases.
Okay.
And the strikes were quite effective. They resulted in significant casualties, including, notably, the killing of senior Iranian military figures. Hossein Salami, the head of the IRGC, was reported killed.
The head of the Revolutionary Guard Corps. That's huge.
It is. And Prime Minister Netanyahu's government, they framed this as a preemptive strike.
Preemptive.
Yeah, arguing it was vital to stop Iran's nuclear program. They claimed it was getting close to a point of no return.
That phrase again.
Exactly. And the justification was based on intelligence, reportedly Mossad intelligence, suggesting Iran was enriching uranium to levels that could potentially produce a nuclear weapon within weeks.
Okay, that point of no return claim is incredibly serious, especially with nuclear programs.
Yeah.
How does Iran respond to that? I mean, are they admitting they're close to a weapon?
No, absolutely not. Iran has consistently and very strongly denied pursuing nuclear weapons. Their official line has always been that the program is purely for peaceful energy needs.
Right.
And you have Rafael Grossi, the head of the IAEA, the UN's nuclear watchdog. He's stated publicly there's no evidence of a, quote, systematic weapons program. But he has also said that Iran's enrichment levels are concerning, even if not directly tied to a bomb program yet. So you see this huge gap in narratives.
A definite clash there. Okay, so Israel strikes. Iran denies the nuclear weapons intent. But they didn't just sit back, did they? The retaliation was fast.
Oh, almost immediate. Iran launched its own barrage. Missiles, drones, targeting major Israeli cities.
Which cities specifically?
Reports focus on Tel Aviv and Haifa, and these attacks tragically kill at least 24 people in Israel.
24 killed. So the retaliation was deadly.
It was, and it certainly caused significant damage. But it's also important to mention Israel's Iron Dome system.
Right, the defense shield.
Yeah, exactly. Bolstered by U.S. help, it did manage to intercept a large number of the incoming missiles and drones. Still, some got through. Strikes hit residential areas, critical infrastructure too, like a power plant near Haifa. It definitely showed Iran's capability to inflict pain.
So they demonstrated capability, even with interceptions.
Yes. Although, interestingly, Israel has since claimed Iran's missile stockpile might be dwindling. They even asserted they've destroyed about half of Iran's ballistic missile launchers in these exchanges.
Okay. So a rapid, violent tit-for-tat, bang, bang. It really paints a picture of things escalating incredibly quickly.
It does.
But like you said, unpacking this means going deeper. This isn't new, is it? This rivalry has been simmering, sometimes boiling over for decades. Can you sort of walk us through the roots of this long shadow war?
Yeah, absolutely. To really get it, you have to rewind to 1979, Iran's Islamic Revolution. That was the turning point.
Before 79, things were different.
Completely different, relatively speaking.
Okay.
The Shah's Iran actually had a working, if complex, relationship with Israel, but the revolution changed everything. The new government in Tehran adopted this hardline anti-Israel position almost overnight.
And that wasn't just rhetoric, right?
No, not at all. They started actively supporting groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, groups Israel considers terrorist organizations which directly challenge its security.
And Israel's response over the years.
Well, Israel has consistently pushed back, targeting Iranian nuclear scientists, conducting airstrikes against Iranian forces or proxies, especially in Syria and Lebanon. So for decades, it's been this dangerous kind of chess match, but mostly fought indirectly through proxies.
A shadow war,
Yeah.
as it's often called.
Yeah.
So the huge question then is why now? Why did it suddenly spill out from the shadows into such direct, overt conflict between the two states themselves? What was the tipping point?
That really is the million-dollar question, and it seems it wasn't just one thing, but maybe a convergence of factors, a kind of triple threat, maybe?
Okay. What are they?
First, as we discussed, Iran's nuclear program reaching that perceived critical threshold, that 60% enrichment figure being key, that really narrowed the window for Israel from their perspective.
Okay, the nuclear clock ticking. What second?
Second, Israel seems to have perceived a strategic window of opportunity. They'd reportedly weakened some of Iran's key proxies, especially Hezbollah, after assassinating its leader, Hassan Nasrallah, back in 2024.
Right, Nasrallah's assassination was a major event.
It was, and it perhaps created an opening Israel felt it could exploit. And third, you had the backdrop of stalled diplomacy. The U.S.-Iran nuclear talks weren't going anywhere.
So let's hope for a diplomatic fix.
Exactly. It sort of removed a potential off-ramp, making a military option perhaps seem more necessary or at least more likely in Israeli calculations.
And speaking of the U.S., they're obviously deeply involved. President Trump made some very bold statements, like claiming total control of Iran's skies. What led Washington to shift from saying we won't intervene directly to actually striking Iranian nuclear sites?
Well, Washington's role here is incredibly complex, and it escalated quickly. Initially, yes, President Trump supported Israel's right to self-defense, but was quite clear the U.S. wouldn't jump in directly.
But that changed.
That changed dramatically. On June 21st, the U.S. itself launched strikes. They hit 3 major Iranian nuclear facilities: Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan.
Direct U.S. military action on Iranian soil against nuclear sites. That's a massive escalation.
It's a huge escalation, a real game changer, likely driven by that perceived imminent nuclear threat and the spiraling conflict. And of course, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, responded with a very stark warning about irreparable damage if the U.S. strikes continued.
So the U.S. is now directly in the kinetic fight. That really broadens the stakes, doesn't it? Beyond Israel, Iran, the U.S.
Yeah.
What are the ripple effects? What does this mean for the wider Middle East?
Oh, the implications are enormous. The Middle East is, perpetually volatile, and this just pours gasoline on several fires.
How?
Well, think about the Arab states, like Saudi Arabia, the UAE. They'd been cautiously warming up to Israel, partly to counterbalance Iran now. They're extremely nervous about being dragged into a wider war they absolutely want no part of.
Understandably. What about economically?
Big risks there, too. Iran has threatened to close the Strait of Hormuz.
The oil choke point.
Exactly. It's vital for global oil shipments. If that closes, even temporarily, you could see global oil prices spike dramatically. Brent crude already hit $76 a barrel recently. There are genuine fears it could shoot past $100 if the strait is seriously disrupted.
$100 a barrel. Wow. Any other regional impacts?
Well, yeah. Think about Iran's proxies, like the Houthis in Yemen. Even if weakened, they might lash out unpredictably, trying to cause trouble, further destabilizing places that are already incredibly fragile.
So regional instability is a major concern. What about the rest of the world? How are other big players like China, Russia, Europe reacting?
It's a mixed bag. China and Russia, who tend to back Iran, they've called for de-escalation, publicly at least. But let's be honest, they probably also see this as an opportunity to gain influence, maybe challenge U.S. dominance while Washington is focused here.
And the Western allies.
G7.
The G7, even with Trump leaving their meeting early, they put out a statement affirming Israel's right to self-defense, but they also clearly pointed the finger at Iran as a source of instability.
What about the UN? Can they do anything?
The UN seems, frankly, paralyzed. As usual in these situations, any strong resolution against Israel would likely face a U.S. veto in the Security Council, so its ability to act decisively is pretty limited.
Okay, so it's a mess. Given all these dangerous currents, what's the best we can hope for right now? Is there any path back towards de-escalation?
Diplomacy is really the only hope, however narrow that path might seem right now.
Are there any signals, any positive signs?
There are some glimmers. Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, did state publicly they'd be willing to negotiate if Israel stops its attacks. That's a big if, of course. A conditional offer?
Yes. And you have others trying to mediate. Britain's Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, mentioned maybe a 2-week window for talks to potentially get started.
A 2-week window. That's tight.
Very tight. For any talks to work, both sides need to take a major step back from the brink. And, President Trump's influence, the pressure he might be able to put on Israel, that could actually be a key factor in creating space for talks.
That raises the unavoidable and, frankly, quite scary question. What's the worst-case scenario if diplomacy fails? If this just keeps spiraling?
The worst case is truly alarming. We could be looking at a much wider regional war.
Involving more countries?
Potentially. And you can't ignore the nuclear dimension. If Iran feels existentially threatened, truly backed into a corner, might they make a desperate dash for a nuclear weapon as the ultimate deterrent?
That's the nightmare scenario.
It is. And conversely, Israel might feel compelled to intensify its strikes precisely to prevent that outcome, which could then drag the U.S. and others even deeper into the conflict. It's a classic escalation spiral.
And the human cost.
The human toll is already horrific. Over 430 reported dead in Iran, 24 in Israel. Those numbers could just explode in a wider conflict.
Right.
We'd be talking about a humanitarian catastrophe alongside massive regional instability.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, which has been incredibly insightful, what are the absolute key takeaways you think our listeners should hold on to from all this?
I think, number one, just how incredibly fragile the balance is in the Middle East. It's constantly teetering.
Yeah.
Number two, both Israel and Iran genuinely believe they have legitimate core security concerns driving their actions. Understand that doesn't excuse anything, but it's crucial context.
Right. Their perspectives matter.
Absolutely. Third, and perhaps most importantly, continued escalation serves literally no one's long-term interests. Not the region's stability, not the global economy, and certainly not the ordinary people caught in the middle.
So what's the bottom line?
The bottom line is that diplomacy, however difficult, however frustrating, backed by serious concerted international pressure, is really the only viable way to pull back from the brink and avoid a catastrophe.
Thank you. That really distills the complexity and the stakes involved. Your insights have been invaluable in helping us and hopefully our listeners navigate this.
My pleasure. It's crucial to keep talking about these things.
Absolutely. And to you, our listener, we really hope this deep dive has given you a clearer picture of this incredibly pressing global story. It leaves us with a lot to think about. Considering everything we've explored today, what does that phrase we kept hearing, point of no return, what does it truly mean? Not just for a nuclear program, but maybe for the trajectory of an entire region. Something to ponder. Keep asking questions, keep digging deeper, and keep learning. Until next time, stay curious and stay informed.